on module number 8, and we're going to look at the respiratory system. Okay, so this again just talks about the connection between our systems, but we also want to just delve into the function of the respiratory system. So essentially our function is to exchange gas. We need to be able to inhale and get that oxygen into our lungs, and we need to, when we exhale, release that carbon dioxide out. So there's lots of mechanisms that make this work, and again I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible for sort of the grade 10 level. And again, what are we doing? We're just looking at an overview of 3 of our 11 body systems, so we get a sense of how these organ systems can work together to make an organism. Okay, so our respiratory system, you can see here again we need to talk about the fact that you have your right lung and your left lung, because we're taking it from the perspective of the person that we're looking at, right? So if you want to go do surgery, you got to make sure, are you looking at the person's right side or is it your right side? Well, it always goes from the perspective of the person. Okay, your right lung has 3 lobes and your left lung has 2 lobes. The connecting piece, which carries the air down and also carries the carbon dioxide out, is your trachea. Okay, and you can actually feel the ridges of your trachea at the front part of your throat. Your esophagus that carries the food is behind your trachea, and it's just soft tissue that kind of stays closed together unless there's actually food. Do you remember that piece of anatomy that actually covers up the trachea or opens it up depending on whether air or food are going in? Epiglottis. Okay, so the epiglottis is important for allowing only air to get to your lungs, right? You know what happens if you've ever had that feeling of choking. It's when you get a little piece of food or a little piece of water down towards that area and you can't get the air in. So you can suffocate, you can drown if you don't get air into your lungs and instead you have fluid that builds up, or if you have a piece of food, right, that gets lodged right there, then you have to do the Heimlich maneuver to be able to have enough air pressure to actually push that out. Okay, so back to our respiratory system here. We've got our lungs. There's a little piece of anatomy called your diaphragm. This actually is a thin little muscle that controls the contraction and relaxation that allows the lungs to either fill up with air or get that air to push out. And when you breathe, inhalation is the process by which air goes in, okay? And our goal is to get that oxygen gas into our body, in through the nasal cavity, the mouth, down your trachea to your lungs. When you inhale, it's the coordination between this diaphragm muscle and the intercostal muscles of your ribs that actually allow your lungs to be able to inflate and deflate. Okay, so you know how muscles contract. Well, and if you've ever eaten ribs before from another animal, you know what that muscle looks like, right? When you're eating ribs, you're eating your intercostal muscles, if you will. Those are the muscles that contract. So when your diaphragm contracts, so it pushes down, gets close together, contracts, and the muscles of your ribs contract, those 2 components allow your lungs to have more space to fill up. Does that make sense? Okay. When your lungs fill up, that air that was inside of your lungs now has less pressure, and air tends to go from an area of high pressure to low pressure. So when that happens and you're inhaling, because the muscle contracts, your lungs fill up, the air will rush into your mouth and fill your lungs. And then the opposite happens when you exhale. Okay, so that's your diagram down here. What happens? Your diaphragm relaxes, your muscles between your ribs relax, and those 2 components cause your lungs to squeeze together, less volume, greater pressure, and now the air from inside of your lungs will come out of your mouth. And the air that is exhaled has a greater concentration of carbon dioxide. All right, that's essentially what happens when you inhale and exhale. Now, I had another little note at the bottom here. So when you exhale, the volume of your lungs increases because you have decreased pressure and the air zooms in. That's your inhalation, okay? That's your where is that? Inhalation explanation. The opposite would just take place for exhalation. All right, so exhalation, the volume decreases. Why? Because the diaphragm and the muscles relax, causes your lungs to decrease. That causes the air pressure to increase, and then your air will exhale from your lungs out of your body. All right, moving on. Next little bit here, you can see that trachea branches off and branches off and branches off. You have two lungs, so you've got a left bronchus and a right bronchus, and then the bronchus ends in the bronchioles. And you can see here that it's a great diagram of what that looks like at the very end. At the end of the bronchioles, you have these structures that are so important in biology. They're called the alveoli. They actually look like little bunches of grapes. Okay, these are the parts of the lungs where the gas actually gets exchanged. So you can see that they're round, they have a huge surface area. You'll notice a pattern, right? Large surface area equals a decreased diffusion distance. And when you decrease the diffusion distance and you have a huge surface area, you are very efficient at being able to do what that structure needs to do, which is simply the exchange of gases. Okay, so alveoli, plural, alveolus, singular, but you have lots of alveoli. This is one of those structures that if you have a disease like emphysema, let's say you know somebody who's been a smoker for their whole life, the walls of the alveoli actually break down. So people that have emphysema have a hard time breathing because they've completely depleted the gas exchange tissue. So where gas actually exchanges is now disintegrated. It's completely gone. And if you have less area to exchange those gases, clearly you have a problem with your breathing. The other thing I want you to note is, can you see that capillary? There is your connection between your circulatory system and your respiratory system. Concentration of oxygen goes from where it's a high concentration to where it's a low concentration. That's the concept of diffusion. Carbon dioxide also goes from where it's highly concentrated to where it's not very concentrated. Again, by diffusion, those gases simply exchange over top of the membrane, the cell membrane, in those structures, and your system now has a high concentration of oxygen in the blood that's now going to go back to what organ? The heart, right? It's going to go back to the heart, and then your blood will get pumped using your heart to send it to the rest of your body. Okay, that's it. That's your respiratory system in a nutshell. And when you talk about a specialized structure, it's the alveoli, again, because that's where the gas exchange takes place, so you can get oxygen-rich blood. All right, let's have a quick look at the structure page. Again, you're going to look at the nasal cavity, the pharynx, the larynx. You can see a picture that kind of shows where the esophagus is behind your trachea, but you can feel your voice box right here moving back and forth, and you can feel the ridges of the trachea. That's where your air goes down and then branches off into the left and right lung. And if you blow it up, you can see what those air sacs look like. An air sac is really an alveoli. That's the best term for it. And then this blow up diagram right here shows where you get the diffusion of carbon dioxide and oxygen. Okay, that's it. That's it for our respiratory system. So your activity now is to finish up your respiratory system questions from the textbook. Watch the videos as many times as you need to. And then there's a summative task at the end. And again, the questions are listed at the bottom of page number 10. That I would like you to submit. And that's it for module number 8. That's our body systems. I hope you enjoy that. And if you do like how the body works, you know what? You can take it and learn more of it in grade 11. And I'm really sorry that we didn't get a chance to do the frog dissection. Who knows if we're back in June? Maybe we will. And if not, you'll get a chance to look at these systems in detail when you do the fetal pig dissection in grade 11 biology. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.